good to have a really fresh blade. But also notice you want to lay that blade where you're dragging like this. You'll be able to feel it. You'll have to practice it. But if you lay that blade perfectly flat like this, what's going to happen? It's going to try to skip on you. So you want to have that blade like this, lean down to be able to drag. And you can experiment with that because different directions will yield slightly different results on the sizing of the strands that you pull out. And as I said, in this particular case, on this particular hair, I will actually put on this style of color and style of hair, I will put a lot more detail in it than most hairs that I deal with. One of the reasons I chose this picture was because of this coloring and the amount of detail that exists in this hair. Fortunately, blade work doesn't require a whole lot of effort. But you don't want to get in there where you're damaging your surface. So if you're working with a blade, you want to just make sure you're just pulling off the paint. It's a very gentle, should not be something where you're trying to dig in. Then it's just a question of following the direction of the hair strokes. If you do this right on this erasing, you really almost couldn't feel any of your blade strokes. If you've laid your paint really light and you're really gentle with your blade strokes, there's really not an edge that exists on the painting. So you should be able to, run your hand over and feel like big gaps. If you do, you've done something wrong and gone a little bit too heavy with the paint, or you scratched and damaged your surface. Certain surfaces, of course, are better suited for this than others. So I'm going to get all them hairs where they pull into the scalp and work from the scalp outward right now. This paint's been on since I stopped working on this painting, which was over 24 hours, so it's going to be harder than the paint that I put on, 5 minutes ago. Keep that in mind. Now on the top of this, it's mostly just scratched out. It's mostly white, so I'm just going to very gently, almost imperceptibly, lay some color on there. And in this particular case, if I could find my big eraser, I could pull out big chunks. Hold on. So I'm using that pencil eraser cap, standard pencil eraser cap, nothing special about it. I would prefer my mono sand eraser for this, but I've misplaced it. It'll show up in a minute. I've got several, I just need to dig them out. I just didn't want to stop and look for what I'm missing. Again, keep this stuff clean. When you spray, you don't want to make sure you don't have any, random blobs of paint. Following the line work just a little bit. See how quickly that came out? Because it's wet. Barely having to hit it. And if I pull too far, no big deal. It's hair. We can very, very easily put some paint on there. Since it's such a texture, since hair is so textured, you can get away with a lot of mistakes. So we don't panic if you think you pulled up too much paint in someplace. Just realize that you just go back and repeat the process. You can layer on top of it very easily without having to completely color correct. In most cases, I mean, you can't be like too far out. Still not done on that side, but I'm going to put some attention on this side with my brown. Just a little bit, almost nothing by the time I pull it back out is what I want on here, because this color is a very close to white color. I'll need to shadow tone in here, and that's not a big deal. This color is a little bit, would be considered a little bit over the top if I was not going to be pulling a lot of it out. So it just leaves some shadow tones in the back. So it'll just be some of them brown tones in the back that'll be left showing. I'll get that closer to me before I get in there real tight, because on those edges, because I want to be much more careful with them. I need some big chunks of hair where they come out. See, I want to get a couple of these big chunks right here, and this nice big stroke right there. That big stroke right there that I was just showing, I'll just come in with a big eraser. We'll hit a little bit more color on top of it. That's not a big deal. Couple. And then don't want to get too caught up in getting into this space just yet, because I want to put a couple of little bit more shadow work in there. There's going to be some flyaway hairs that go over the top of this face. So I'm going to stop just shy of getting into the face. Again, paying attention to the directions. Always, always paying attention to the direction the hair is flowing. Alright, let's start taking care of the detail portion. Sorry, those are a little loud. Now, it's just a little bit more texture in here, this way, and then don't need a lot because it has all that crazy wild hairs. So we'll have these hairs that are like and those are pretty bold. I want to come in here and some of these and I'm going to be real gentle and not scratch all the way through on the ends, and then some of them I'm going to be really bold with. See, and I'm just, you got those random weird, you know, curled out. Go ahead and put them in. If you can take off and find a few of them that really stand out to you, you can kind of just add in your own from there, as long as you know, somewhat pay attention to what's going on. Just don't get too crazy and put way too many in there. Although this one has a lot in comparison to most. And up close like we're looking at it right now, it probably looks like I'm creating a mess. We'll zoom out a little bit, but I want you to be able to see exactly what I'm doing here. The hardest ones to do are going to be the ones that curve and then come back, just because it's a little hard to scratch those angles like that without, to make those turns in a quick and gentle pattern. So those are the hardest, in my opinion. If we get a little too much going on, we'll just come in here and on the edges, we'll just come in and blend that out so that it blends in. laying that blade more flat and being cautious allows me to, it'll cause it to skip a little bit, so it'll create random. Now getting my reference right next to it, looking at it really close, I can see that there's some more reddish tone to that. So what I'm doing is I've got quinacridone magenta in here. I mixed a little bit with my gray that I already had in my cup, or black I had in my cup. I want to add just a little of those reddish tones to it carefully. Had I put this in, that color in, added some reddish tones to the brownish tones, I wouldn't have to do that right now. So that's, yeah. I still got work to do here, but I think that's getting you guys a really good idea of what it's starting to look like. Of course, I'll have to bring a little of those reds in over here. And I'm also going to have to come in with a little bit more gray. We're going to tone that in. And that red's a little, way too much, actually. In its current strength. So now I've added some gray to it, or black to it. I'm going to use it, I think. And this edge, I'm going to just glaze over this to create that break, and then over here between right there is a dark spot, so you got just a little bit of the hair coming out and over it like that. Trying to be gentle with my erasing. Now, I've got some small random textures that come over the face. Before I put them in, I'll just want to make sure, before you put any of those in, make sure you are 100% done with any color corrections on the face. I'm going to come in with my fiberglass scratch pen because it's easier to control how light and how dark I put those scratches in. So I'm going to gently come over. So you'll see I'm not cutting all the way back to white. Now if I pull down tight on my scratch pen, of course I can come back, you know, much further, and I'll use it a little bit around here, soften those edges. The scratch pen is much more forgivable and controllable. If y'all don't have one, well, go over to my kit page and get you a couple fiberglass scratch pens, order them in, because they are extraordinarily handy. And so some very subtle hairs in here. I'll use it up here, same way. This paint has been on for a very long time. Subtly working on it is a little harder now. I should have put them in way earlier, or not stopped and left this painting alone for over a day at the stage I did, but you know, life is what it is. Situations like this, take a deep breath, gather your courage, come in with your eraser or your pen right over the top of your artwork where you got those random hairs like that. Pay close attention to where they should be, you know, if you want to replicate those exactly. Now, you could mark out where they need to be, but over time, I'm not worried about making any mistakes on top of the hair, because as I pointed out, it's very easy to fix. It's not going to be so easy to fix if I scratch out on top of this eye and screw it up. And you want to be absolutely positive you're not going to change anything on that section of the eye before you do it. I'm starting to build a little bit of depth in here now. We're starting to get a little bit of realism going. To finish off the hair in here, I have to get out some of these flesh tone colors. I got a little bit of work to do on the forehead to make that, you know, a little more accurate. But yeah, we'll do that in the next part. Talk to you guys soon. Okay, I mostly did most of the right side off camera. It's just more of the same. What was on the left hand side, just a little bit less work. I still got a little bit more to do in it, but I'm going to get into tying these in. I'm tying these skins in now. So before I do so, I need to check and make sure, looking at my reference carefully, where do them shadows run under. So that shadow should actually run under this hairline, and it's got a little bit of that red tone. So we go back to that same quinacridone magenta that I used earlier and mixed with black. Again, guys, I know y'all might not have these colors. Some of you will, depends on what paint line you're using. But we should be able to be learning how to create any color we want, no matter what paint line we use. So I'm gonna start bringing that red in, toning that forehead just a little bit, spraying from a distance very gently. I'm also going to do any final toning work that I feel I need to do while I'm at it. Make sure I've got some of that red underneath it. I'm also going to bring some of that red into the scalp from her skin. Notice you don't even see the paint hitting the surface. Now once I've got a little bit of that quinacridone in there, now I can start to bring that hair over the top. We'll have another darker colored tone to go in there. So you've got some stray hairs. This is where you want to focus your detail on, because it's a very prominent place. It'll be very noticeable and stand out really quickly. So if you're going to, as a general rule, I leave out things a lot in paintings, and by learning to put all of your detail work into the areas that are going to be seen really readily, you can, do some shortcuts. It doesn't mean you can just, crap out the rest of the picture. There's another set of hair. That's why I had to get this color in here that runs right through there. I'm going to put some of these small hairs that come out of the scalp line. Now, I need a darker mix. So I've added some black to that same red mix. Now, bear in mind, if you do not have really good trigger control, what you can do is add a lot of transparent base in so that you can hit these really light lines, because you do have to hit this very gently. This still has some red tones to it. Notice how I'm bringing that shadowing in underneath that hair, how it raises that hair up. Even though when you probably looked at it, you thought there's really not much else to do to that painting, but these little things will make a tremendous impact if you're going for realism, at least. And now we got the dark in there. Sorry about the dogs running through the house. They own the place. I just live here. Need a sharper blade than that. Changing blades often, having good sharp blades make a huge and tremendous difference in how well you can do work with a blade. See how I tied that back in? Remember me talking about how the value was okay on that eye earlier, but the tone was off? Now I'm going to take my quinacridone magenta and just barely, and I should have got it when I was spraying earlier, just barely gonna touch it. Just a little bit of warmth to it. When you're doing this, it is key to spray, stop, look, as I've been saying. If you're not 100% certain it's going to help the picture, do not spray it. Practice off screen or off of your picture before you go spraying anything if you're not 100% certain exactly what it's going to do. The last final thing I'm going to do to this painting, I may do a little bit of work off of it, I don't know, but I'm going to come over the edge and I'm going to bring some fuzziness off of that little sweater. Some little lines, just gentle. I really need to come in and put some more detail in this, and I'll probably do that, but I'll do that off screen when I get around to it, or off camera rather. I don't really see no need to do the same erasing techniques and stuff and the same little detail techniques that we were talking about earlier. And that's a wrap, guys. And the difference you see in color there was the difference between it sitting on my really bright studio lights for video recording and taken in a normal ambient light condition.